The plane trembled as it touched the wet tarmac. Rain fell soft, heavy, almost deliberate, like the sky had been holding a grudge. I gripped my leather bag, the strap worn smooth from 2 years of flight, 2 years of absence. Every step toward the exit felt like stepping into someone else's memory. He was there before I could blink. My stepfather, tall, shadowed by the gate, the half-smile frozen in the same way it had been at my mother's wedding. I paused, my lungs forgetting how to fill, hoping that maybe time had softened him. "Welcome back," he said. The words floated over the drizzle, sweet and wrong, rehearsed like a play I hadn't auditioned for. I thought for a heartbeat that maybe he meant it, that maybe home still existed somewhere beyond the gate, beyond the rain, beyond the years. And then his hand was there, across my face, sharp, sudden. My cheek burned, my ears rang with the hum of the terminal. People moved around me, blurred. A mother in the distance clutched her child. A businessman adjusted his tie, and I stood frozen, hearing nothing but the silence that followed the strike. She didn't move. My mother's eyes, calm but unreadable, watched from behind him. Why had she asked me to come back? The letters she wrote, the soft words promising, "Things are different now." All of it seemed like a trap. My bag felt heavier, as if the rain outside had seeped into my chest. The terminal smelled of wet concrete and jet fuel. The lights flickered in a way that made shadows stretch across the floor, reaching for me, waiting. My stepfather's face was calm now, almost smiling, but the air around him was thick, charged. I wanted to speak, to ask why, but the words lodged themselves in my throat. I took a step forward, then another, each one uncertain, each one measured. The wet ground reflected the red-orange sky, bruised like the moment itself. I felt the bag dig into my shoulder, the leather rough against my skin. I felt the hum of the rain, the ache of absence, and the hollow certainty that this wasn't home anymore. Not yet, not ever. And as I walked past him, past her, past the memories that had stretched like ghosts, I realized that returning was never about forgiveness. It was about understanding what I had walked into and whether I would survive it. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling in long strips, curling like old letters left out in the sun. Windows were shut tight, reflecting the storm-gray sky, keeping secrets inside they had no intention of sharing. The front gate squeaked as I pushed it open, a sound that felt louder than it should, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Inside, the air smelled of salt and mildew. It clung to my clothes, to my hair, as though I had walked straight into the past, a past that had grown strange while I was gone. The hallway was empty, polished wood worn smooth in paths I had run along as a child. But now it felt foreign, alien even, like a museum of someone else's life. Childhood photographs were gone. In their place were new portraits, my mother and him smiling side by side, his hand casually around her shoulder. Their eyes met the camera, not me. It made my chest tighten. I remembered the walls once lined with my drawings, my grades, my small triumphs. Now they were blank, neat, curated. Dinner was silent, except for the clink of silverware against plates. My mother's eyes flicked to the window every few seconds, scanning, searching. For what, I could not tell. My stepfather's hand rested on the table, steady, controlling, a quiet command that seemed to bend the room around him. He spoke little, but every word held weight, soft yet deliberate. I tried to speak, to fill the silence with my own presence, but the words caught in my throat. He smiled at me, but not with his eyes. My mother's fingers trembled as she reached for her glass, her movements small, careful, and I realized I wasn't coming home to warmth or reunion. I was walking into a performance, a house where every breath was measured, every glance accounted for. The rain tapped against the windows like a quiet reminder that I was outside and inside at the same time. Outside the life I had left behind. Inside the tension that had been brewing while I was away. I wondered, with a hollow knot in my stomach, who this house had been waiting for, me or the memory of me. I slipped into my old room later that night. The door closed with a hollow click. The walls were bare, the furniture rearranged. Nothing familiar remained, only the silence, only the weight of absence, only the quiet understanding that home was no longer where I had left it, but somewhere I would have to reclaim. I approached my old room slowly, my hand hovering over the doorknob. The wood was cold beneath my fingers. The lock was new, polished metal shining where it hadn't before. Someone had decided who could enter and who could not. Inside, nothing was mine. No posters curled at the corners, no stacks of books leaning like quiet witnesses. The walls were bare, stripped of color, stripped of memory. The bed was made, neat and perfect, as if it had been waiting for someone else to lie there. The air smelled faintly of lavender and something else I couldn't name. Disinfectant, control, secrecy. I crouched, scanning beneath the bed. My fingers brushed against paper. One envelope, yellowed at the edges, unopened. My mother's handwriting curved across the front, "Don't send." My chest tightened. The letters I had written, the words I had trusted to her care, had never reached their destination. Every secret I had tried to release had been intercepted, paused, silenced. Footsteps echoed softly outside. The floorboards creaked as if aware of my intrusion. I froze, the envelope trembling in my hand. Was the lock meant to keep me safe or to keep me in? A shiver ran along my spine. The house had grown a will of its own while I was gone, and I was no longer certain which rooms belonged to whom. The walls seemed to hold their breath. Shadows pooled in corners, heavy and patient. I pressed the envelope to my chest, feeling the rough paper bite into my palm. Outside, the wind rattled the window, whispering through the gaps, carrying fragments of voices I couldn't yet understand. My old room, my sanctuary, my hiding place, had become a reminder that I had returned to someone else's order, someone else's story. I sat on the edge of the bed, my bag at my feet. Rain tapped against the window in slow, uneven drips. The letters, the room, the silence. They all spoke at once, and yet none of it made sense. Home was no longer a place, it was a question. And tonight, in the quiet of an emptied room, I realized I didn't yet have the answer. Night fell heavy and slow, pressing against the windows of the house. The wind rattled the shutters, carrying the scent of rain and salt from the bay. I lay on the edge of my bed, listening. At first it was just the house settling, boards creaking, pipes humming. Then came the voices, soft, low, tremulous. My mother's voice, pleading. The kind of pleading that bends your chest inwards, that makes silence feel sharp. Then his voice, calm, measured, the kind that carves control into the air. It didn't rise, it didn't fall, but it cut clean through the rhythm of the storm outside, and the storm inside me. I pressed my ear against the wall. My own name drifted out from the kitchen, whispered like a warning. She shouldn't have come. My heartbeat flared, sudden and hot, echoing in my ears louder than the rain. The wind shuddered against the house, carrying fragments of sentences I couldn't fully grasp. I wanted to retreat, to pull the walls around me, but my body was frozen. I had to hear, I had to know. Every sound became a story, the clink of a glass, the shuffle of a chair, the soft inhale of someone holding back tears. Each carried weight, a truth I wasn't ready to confront. I imagined the room from the outside, a figure pressed against the wall, listening, trying to map the house, the people, the lies. The air smelled of damp wood and faint perfume, the kind that clings to a person like memory. Shadows danced across the ceiling from the lightning outside, elongating, shrinking, as if the house itself were alive and breathing with me. I imagined myself a stranger here, an intruder in a world that had moved on without me. When the arguing stopped, only the hum of the storm remained. I lay back, eyes tracing the dark corners of the ceiling. My mother's voice lingered in memory, not in sound, a tremble that could not be erased. The house had walls, yes, but they also had ears, and I realized, with a quiet sinking, that I had returned to a place that was listening, always listening, waiting for me to reveal something I hadn't even known I carried. I was searching for my passport in the desk drawers when I found it, hidden beneath a stack of envelopes, tucked behind the wood as if it had been waiting for me to stumble upon it. A photograph. Faded at the edges, the kind of yellowed paper that smells faintly of dust and time. He was in it, my stepfather, shaking hands with a man I vaguely remembered from my father's funeral. The memory hit me like ice water, distant, blurred, yet impossibly sharp. Something about the way he smiled felt wrong, familiar, but not meant to be there. It didn't belong in the frame. I held it carefully, my fingers brushing over the faces frozen in a moment I hadn't been invited to witness. The air felt heavier, thicker, as though the house had exhaled behind me. Footsteps, too soft to catch immediately, and then his voice, low, almost gentle, behind me. "Some things are better buried," he said. I froze. The photograph slipped slightly in my hands, edges catching the light. I wanted to ask questions, I wanted to demand answers, but the words died in my throat. His tone was soft, dangerous, calm, yet commanding. The kind that leaves you unsettled because danger isn't shouted. It's whispered, measured, controlled. My mother had vanished into the kitchen, her silence louder than any protest. I stood there, photograph in hand, feeling the weight of what it implied but couldn't yet name. Trust, betrayal, secrets hidden behind the everyday motions of life. The storm outside rattled the windows, a sudden flash of lightning illuminating the drawer, the photograph, the lines on his face. His eyes caught mine. Not a warning this time, a promise. Something I could neither ignore nor confront just yet. I placed the photograph back in the drawer, gently, as if touching it could change the past. Every fiber of my being wanted to tear it apart, burn it, demand the truth. But the house was listening, the walls were listening, and I was still learning how to speak loud enough to be heard. That night, I lay in my stripped room, staring at the ceiling, the weight of hidden things pressed down. I realized the house was not just a home. It was a ledger of secrets, and I had just opened the first page. The storm came without warning, as if the sky itself had decided to punish the bay. Rain pounded against the roof, relentless, drumming a rhythm that echoed in every corner of the house. The power flickered once, twice, and then cut entirely. Darkness pooled in the hallways, swallowing familiar shapes, turning the house into something alive, breathing, watching. Voices rose with the wind. My mother tried to speak, small sentences, fragile words, but each time he entered the room, the air shifted. Her words died before they reached me. The tension wasn't loud, it was in the pause, in the way her hands shook, the way he leaned back in the shadows, calm, unshakable. I moved through the house like a ghost, feeling the wet draft from the windows brush against my neck. My eyes caught the bruises on my mother's wrist, partially hidden beneath her sleeve. I wanted to ask, to touch, to demand, but the storm made the room feel closed in, claustrophobic, the walls shrinking around us. Lightning flashed, sharp and blinding. For a moment the world outside was clear, the trees bent under the wind, the bay churning with gray waves. And then I saw him, a figure standing just beyond my bedroom window. The lightning revealed only an outline, but it was enough to make my heart pound, to make my breath catch. Who was watching? How long had someone been waiting in the dark? Thunder rolled, vibrating through the floors, through the furniture, through me. I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to block the noise, but it was everywhere, outside, inside, beneath my skin. I realized then that the storm was more than weather, it was exposure. Every fear, every secret, every quiet thing left unspoken was being dragged into the open. I sat by the window, feeling the cold seep through the glass, listening to the wind scream. My mother huddled nearby, silent, trembling, while he moved through the house, omnipresent, untouchable. The storm was a mirror. The house was alive, and it was showing me its teeth, and in the heart of it I understood the rain was not washing anything away, it was uncovering, the flood was coming in wind. Outside, all were threads leading to something I hadn't yet fully understood. The basement felt colder than before, the shadows sharper. And in the quiet, I understood, the house had been keeping track of everything, and now I had found its record. I found her in the study, the room dim except for the soft glow of a single lamp. She sat at the desk, hands folded, staring at a piece of paper I couldn't yet see. The quiet between us was heavy, like water pressing from all sides. "I wrote letters," she whispered, barely audible over the hum of the storm outside. "Letters for help, but I never sent them." Her voice trembled, fragile as glass. The words hung in the air, fragile and sharp. I felt the weight of every unsent cry, every plea swallowed by fear. I approached slowly. The desk smelled faintly of ink and old paper, of rain blown in through half-closed windows. My mother's eyes didn't meet mine. They flicked past me, somewhere beyond the walls. Somewhere in the past she had tried to escape but couldn't. "They were supposed to save us," she said, voice breaking. I was going to leave him once the renovations were done, but the money vanished, the threats began, and I couldn't. Her hands shook as they traced the edge of the paper. Every line, every word, a testament to years of quiet terror. I sank into the chair across from her, listening. The house held its breath. The walls seemed to lean closer, as if waiting for me to understand. Every silence, every carefully measured calm in the house was fear pretending to be peace. Every small nod, every smile, every glance toward the window had been survival. I finally saw it. The truth behind every staged dinner, every empty room, every hidden ledger. The silence wasn't comfort, it was protection. Not for him, for her, for both of us. My chest tightened as the pieces slotted into place. The storm, the bruises, the letters, the ledger. Fear had been living here for longer than I had. Outside, the rain fell harder. The wind pressed against the windows, rattling them with a persistence that mirrored the ache in my chest. She finally looked at me, eyes hollow but open. "I tried," she said. "I tried to keep us safe, and I failed." I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, and in that small, fragile contact, I realized that the house had kept its secrets long enough. Now we could start to uncover them together. The kitchen was dark, lit only by the pale moonlight slipping through the blinds. I waited by the counter, hands clenched around the edge as if the wood could anchor me. Every creak of the floor, every sigh of the wind felt amplified. He appeared, stepping into the dim glow, calm as ever, but the room felt smaller with his presence. "I know," I said quietly. The words trembled, but they carried the weight of every stolen receipt, every unsent letter, every bruise I had seen. "I know about the money." He didn't flinch, didn't look away. Calm, measured, controlled. "Control, not cruelty," he said, his voice smooth, precise, the kind of voice that tries to shape reality with its tone alone. But I noticed the tiny falter in his smile, the first crack in the mask I had seen for so long. My chest ached, adrenaline and fear mingling in equal measure. "You lied, you stole, you—" I let the words trail because naming it felt impossible. Each syllable seemed too small for what had been done. She appeared then, from the doorway, clutching something to her chest. Her figure shook, but her eyes were steady. Not angry, not pleading, just present. The letters, the ledger, the bruises, they had all led to this moment. He glanced at her, then back at me. For a heartbeat the calm veneer slipped. "You should have stayed gone," he muttered, a warning, a regret, a challenge all at once. I stepped forward, not to strike, not to plead, but to claim the space the house had long denied me. She stepped beside me, a silent ally, her presence a quiet rebellion. The room held its breath with us, walls waiting, shadows watching. Outside, the storm had passed. The moonlight pooled across the counter, illuminating dust motes that drifted like tiny witnesses. For the first time I felt the shift, a subtle unraveling of control, a momentary victory in the quiet war that had been waged in the hallways for years. I didn't speak again. We simply stood there, the three of us, in the dim glow, each breath heavy with what had been hidden, what had been stolen, and what we were finally ready to face. The night held us, suspended between fear and freedom, waiting for the next move, the first real step toward daylight. Before dawn, the house was quiet, too quiet. The storm had passed, leaving the world slick and silver under the first light. I packed my bag slowly, each movement deliberate, the leather familiar against my fingers. Every object I touched felt heavy with memory, not mine alone but theirs too. The front door creaked as I opened it. My stepfather's voice echoed down the hallway, sharp, then fading. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. The sound of my footsteps on wet pavement was enough. Each step carried the weight of everything I had uncovered, every lie, every secret, every unsent letter. She came to the car, eyes hollow but free. She didn't speak, just placed a hand lightly on mine. Her presence was steady, a quiet reassurance after nights of whispered arguments, bruises, and fear. The air smelled of salt, wet earth, and possibility. I could see the sea beyond the road, the waves reflecting the first fragile light of morning. The house loomed behind us, still sleeping, still holding its stories. I glanced back once, but the reflection in the wet asphalt wasn't the home I remembered. It was a place of shadows, secrets, and survival. My mother and I had survived it anyway. That had to be enough. I started the car. The engine hummed softly, blending with the early cries of birds waking in the trees. My mother stayed silent, letting me lead, letting me claim this first act of freedom. I gripped the wheel tighter, eyes on the road, heart still heavy but lighter than it had been in years. The sea stretched ahead, endless and unjudging. I realized then that some homes could not be rebuilt, some memories could not be restored, but some hearts, even after betrayal, even after fear, could still move forward. The morning was ours, quiet, fragile, and unstoppable. The airport smelled of rain and jet fuel, the same mix as 2 years ago. I stood by the window, the leather of my bag rough against my palms. Outside, the world was wet, reflective, shifting in silver puddles. The rain had started again, soft, deliberate, like the sky hadn't forgotten. I watched the plane taxi, lights cutting through mist. Everything below shrank, streets, houses, the bay, until even memory seemed small. The house, my mother, him, the ledger, the letters. It all belonged to a distance I could now breathe across. I held the photograph in my hand, her smile, mine, a moment before everything changed. I traced the edges lightly, feeling the weight of the past, the guilt, the fear. Some homes could never be rebuilt, some betrayals could never be undone. But some hearts, broken, hesitant, wary, could still rise above. The engines roared, the plane lifted, slow at first, then quicker, climbing through clouds that swallowed the earth whole. I didn't look back. The rain slid down the windows in silver rivulets, streaking memory into something fluid, movable, erasable. I exhaled finally, letting the tension slide from my chest. Freedom wasn't loud, it was quiet, patient, in the space between fear and hope. The photograph rested in my hand, small but enough. It was a tether, a reminder, a proof that some pieces of us could survive even when the walls around us had been built to hide, to trap, to control. The clouds passed. Light spilled into the cabin. I didn't know what awaited at the destination, only that I was moving toward it, only that I was leaving behind the house by the bay, the storm, the ledger, and stepping into a sky vast enough to hold every fragment of me that had survived. And for the first time in years, the horizon didn't scare me.